Councilmember Riddell, can you hear me okay?
I hear you fine.
Okay, very good. Are we about ready, folks? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our City Council meeting, City of Yucaipa of October 26, 2020. We'll go ahead and we'll start our meeting. Call it to order and ask Captain Williams to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Captain. Mrs. Crawford, will you call roll, please?
Councilmember Bogue. Councilmember Duncan.
Here.
Councilmember Riddell.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen.
Present.
Mayor Avila.
Here. Okay, Mr. Casey, are there any changes to the agenda tonight?
We have no changes this evening, Mr. Mayor. There is a development agreement that was distributed to council this evening, and a copy is available in the back of the room as well.
Thank you. That's agenda to item amendment to number 13.
Just the actual development agreement was distributed under a separate cover, so it's not really an amendment, but additional information that was handed out this evening.
All right, thank you, sir. Okay, we'll move on to public comment. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have something that you'd like to talk about in a general sense, this is your opportunity. We do have three public comment slips in the back of the room there. If you have anything you'd like to say, you can fill out the form and hand it over to the city clerk here to your right. Right now, we have but one public comment. That'll be from Scott Ward, representative for Supervisor Rao, 3rd District.
As he's coming up, if I may add, Mr. Mayor, I was reminded there is a minor change to the development agreement itself, but it was the development agreement that was handed out this evening. So there are no new changes to what was in that development agreement, just for the record.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council, and a good evening. Good to see you all again. I am here with the Board of Supervisors from San Bernardino County. I just wanted to get a quick reminder out to anyone who may be listening to this meeting online or anybody in chambers. There's a very important event tomorrow in Oak Glen. The Inland Empire Resource Conservation District is sponsoring a resource fair following the El Dorado fire to get residents ready and prepared for the rainy season ahead. Got some of the departments with the city that are going to be participating in this tomorrow. Residents can come by and, among other things, get free sandbags. Lots of information available, too, about how to prepare. This is tomorrow, 1 till 6 o'clock, Pilgrim Pines Camp in Oak Glen. I will be there, too. So anyone who is hearing this, please do come by and look for us tomorrow and be prepared. Thank you.
Thank you, and you took my thunder. All righty.
What time was that at again?
From 1 to 6.
1 to 6.
Okay, we're moving on. If there's no other public comments, this is for item number 11. Is that correct, Kit? You want to speak on item number 11? Thank you. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. Would anybody like to pull anything off the consent agenda? If not, do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll motion, but I'm also abstaining from item number 1.
Okay,
I'll second.
we have a first and a second. If no further discussion, Jennifer, will you take the roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Bogue.
Aye.
Councilmember Duncan.
Aye.
Councilmember Riddell.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen.
Aye.
Mayor Avila.
Yes. All right. Mayor and council member business. Obviously, we're going to talk about the resource fair. I want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to attend that. This is very, very important. Now that we're done with the fires, we get to look forward to the winter and the potential floods and mudslides. We need to be very diligent on protecting ourselves on this. Okay, if there are no other council member business, we'll move on to item.
Actually, I have a question of staff today. We had a power outage. Do we have an update on what happened, what occurred with that?
As of mid-afternoon, Edison hadn't been able to figure out what had caused it, unless Fermin has additional information. But it was an emergency. It wasn't a planned outage. It was something that occurred that they were trying to chase down. But as of mid-afternoon, well, I guess as of right now, we still don't know. They still don't know and haven't shared with us what caused it, whether it was because of the wind, trees on the lines, or whether it was something else that caused it. But it was an emergency, not a planned event.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, go ahead.
About a week ago, we had a gentleman that was jogging here in Yucaipa, and he was discovered in the street dead or unconscious, and I guess the fire department tried to revive him. This gentleman was in the healthcare profession. He was the only breadwinner for his family. He has a wife and 3 daughters that's left behind. They've set up a GoFundMe page. I went to their home and offered our condolences as a city and tried to find out as much as I could. There is a GoFundMe page in case anyone would like to donate to their family. They need all the help that they can get.
Very good. Thank you for that information. Mr. Bogue, do you have anything?
No.
Mr. Riddell, do you have anything for council member business or reports?
No, I don't.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to possible action on pending legislation. Anything there to report?
I have nothing this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, nothing to report there. We'll go on to department reports. First out of the gate, fiscal year 2021, first quarter budget report, Mr. Casey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start us off. Ryan is also available for questions or follow-up on some of the items. I'd like to break the staff report up into 2 kind of primary sections, if I may. The first section just being a general review of our financial condition. And it's difficult to do a real detailed review at first quarter, but we committed to come to you at first quarter with the best information that we had available at this time. But as you know, revenues come in typically in larger chunks from property taxes and later in the year, and then again in the spring, and sales taxes are always a little bit in arrears as well. So not a lot of new information to share with you relative to revenues, other than it appears as though, based on our conversations with HDL and their statewide analysis and now more regional analysis, our forecast on sales tax was pretty close, it looks like, and we believe our property taxes are probably pretty close as well in terms of those forecasts. So nothing to indicate any significant changes relative to those issues. Also nothing to indicate any significant changes based on fiscal year 1920 year-end costs at this point, although Ryan and his team are finishing up those numbers. Nothing to indicate that our forecast during the budget process to indicate that our revenues are going to meet our expenses in fiscal year 1920, other than the paramedic costs, of course, without a CPI in that assessment. And that's very unusual, just a reminder for the public. Without CARES Act funding, very few cities were able to say that their revenues met their expenditures for fiscal year 1920. And then in terms of, and part of that is, of course, the frozen positions that we'd like to talk about in this item as well in a minute, and some of the other mitigation efforts that we implemented in the budget process to make sure that our revenues exceeded our expenditures. And I'd just like to talk for a moment about kind of the indicators for financial conditions of an agency, a city. And council has certainly heard this over the years in their budget process, and in fact we have talked about it in our State of the Cities, other events as well. But we're able to report that our undesignated fund balance, other than the paramedic costs, as that will continue to rise without the CPI, continue to be pretty static. And our undesignated fund balance, as you know, is made up of the unassigned, committed, miscellaneous fund balances. And that continues to be in that $21+ million range for the undesignated portion, and the total general fund balance, the total reserves, if you will, $49.6 million estimated at the end of 2019. So those numbers are very, very strong numbers for any city, especially as a percentage of our total operating budget. The undesignated fund balance is in that 74% of our annual budget range, which is, again, very strong. All of that said, we'd like to recommend to council some updates in our first quarter review, some of which have been very positive in terms of the CARES Act funding that has been made available to the city and of course, other cities in the county, starting with what we've characterized in previous agenda items as CARES Act 1, the initial CARES Act funding in the amount of $687,883 allocated to the city directly from the Department of Finance from the federal CARES Act program. As council, I'm sure, recalls, then came along CARES Act 2, the CARES Act funding that was coming through the county, also from the same federal funding sources, but through the county instead of through the Department of Finance. And that's also in the amount of $687,883. Given the very, very short time frame for use of those funds and the guidelines associated with those funds, council may recall that we applied for police services funding for that amount, and we expect to receive the check from the county for that literally the next day or two. That invoice was submitted to the county late last week. The third item is we'd like the council to consider over the years, we've had a number of service level options that have been prioritized by the city council through the goals and objectives process, and then ultimately through the budget process that have either been completed or deprioritized along the way. Some of them go back 4 or 5 years, and we'd like council to consider reallocating those remaining funds, if there are balances or total amounts, through city manager approval to the unassigned fund balance or to other projects that council has prioritized. And then with the same approach with service level options that haven't been completed yet, our finance team believes it's appropriate to reallocate those funds, allocate those funds again, even though they've been allocated in the past, for projects that have been prioritized by council, have been budgeted, but not completed by the end of June. And so that's item C in its totality. Item D is a similar item in that the fire truck that was, if council recalls, saved for every year. We put aside $100,000 a year for a number of years, just like we did for the last fire truck that we purchased. And that purchase is carried over the fiscal year. It looks like it'll be ready by January because of, I'll call them COVID-19 delays. It's taken quite a bit longer than we thought. And again, the finance group feels that we should reallocate those funds for the fire truck because it carried over from one fiscal year to the next. So it was a service level option, essentially, that council had approved in the budget process in fiscal year 19-20. We had, in the budget, council had approved setting aside $100,000 a year for a number of years to save money for the fire truck, but to reallocate and recognize the increase in the budget for the fiscal year where that truck is likely to be purchased, which is this fiscal year. And then finally, on the actions, amend the annual budget to reflect the allocation of funds from the savings in the general fund resulting from the CARES Act funding. And the way that works is that those funds for the police services for CARES Act 1, CARES Act 2 were already allocated by council in the budget process. And so any displacement, if you will, replacement of those general fund monies with CARES Act funds provides the council with some flexibility relative to those funds that were previously allocated. And so staff's recommendation for those funds this evening, and you'll hear more about the details in the actual agenda items associated with those contracts, contract financial services, and also the mural and repair work as well, are both separate items in the agenda. But staff is recommending that a portion of those freed up general funds, if you will, be allocated for the contract financial services. Misty CHENG's team has done a very good job of, as Councilmember Duncan talked about a couple of meetings ago, with some of the review of our financial practices and getting caught up on the treasurer's report and the bank reconciliation and the bond reconciliations and now SBC TA reimbursements for funding for projects that have been completed this year and last fiscal year. So those by themselves are in the neighborhood of 5 to 6 million, probably closer to 6 million. So they're doing some really good work for us in those areas, and so we think that it would be helpful to continue with their services. Very helpful through the end of the fiscal year. We estimate that to be about 90,000. And then beyond a service level option that had been previously approved, a balance for a service level option that had been previously approved for public art by City Council, staff's recommending another 12,330 in a budget update for the mural that you'll see later this evening as a separate staff report. And then finally, you'll see also on the agenda some items relative to some very large public works projects. And I'd like to take this opportunity to remind folks, the public, these public works projects in many cases are essentially an economic development tool. The County Line Road project, for example, later on the agenda, we believe is really important for the economic development of that county line corridor, both on the CALIMESA side of county line and on the city of Yucaipa side of county line. And you've seen the improvements, the projects already, private sector projects already moving forward with the affordable housing, senior affordable housing project being a catalyst, but others are in the planning stages, and you'll see those move forward. And many of those are predicated on the two cities working together to build the infrastructure, much like we saw with Yucaipa Boulevard, where that $10+ million project partnership between the Water District, the city, the Edison, and others, Western Heights, was a catalyst for the development project on Yucaipa Boulevard that includes a medical facility and Chick-fil-A and a number of other restaurants planned. Those projects would not have moved forward without that infrastructure. So the staffing costs that staff is recommending in the budget, first quarter budget review include public works or development services staffing to help support the County Line Road project that is ready to move forward into construction in the next several months. The Wilson 3 Basin project and the adjacent other developments that is literally ready to move forward in the next couple of weeks in construction with approval of some of the items on the agenda this evening. And of course, the Finance Division is also needing to fill some of the positions that, or a position that was frozen to mitigate the CARES Act, I call CARES Act recession, that we were experiencing late last fiscal year and into this fiscal year. And so part of the recommendation for those savings, if you will, general fund savings, because of the CARES Act funding, is to fill a few of those positions, giving the, not all of them, not all 6 that we froze, but a few of those positions that we think are absolutely essential to be successful going forward with the projects, with their finance needs, et cetera. And then finally, the last item in your actions for this evening, for this particular agenda item, is the ERP program project, which is basically updating our software and implementation associated with that for finance, for planning, for all of development services, really, public works, planning, building and safety, basically a complete replacement of the City View system that we have now,
Take them out to the street?
including code enforcement. And so our recommendation this evening is to consider establishing a budget for that over the course of 3 years. Would maybe become a capital improvement program project that over the course of 3 years, the first year, we thought could be funded through direct CARES Act 3 funding. Megan and her team reached out to the county last week and kind of went through all of our CARES Act 3 pre-applications to see which ones might be eligible. The ERP funding, they weren't as comfortable that might be eligible pursuant to the guidelines that were established, largely because it is unlikely, I would say impossible, to have that system up and running and implemented by the end of December, such that the finance elements or the plan check or the inspection elements could be used by staff or used by the public. It's just going to take longer than a few months to get that in place, probably closer to a year to get the first phase in place. And so based on that information, the preliminary response we got from the county is that that element was unlikely to be eligible. But the other elements that we asked for their feedback on, the city council chambers, the hardware or software purchases that had already been made and implemented, and some other projects, they felt those were all good candidates for CARES Act 3 funding. And so that leaves council with a decision to make relative to whether to move forward in that investment using some of the CARES Act funding that was, or general fund monies that was freed up because of the CARES Act 1 and 2 funding, or we can certainly bring additional information back to you if you so choose. So that's the last action item on your staff report this evening. Staff is happy to answer any questions you may have, but staff is recommending that the City Council approve the action items as listed in your staff report this evening relative to our first quarter review, and receive the first quarter review as well.
All right, very comprehensive. Any questions of staff?
Ray, the fire engine that we were looking to purchase, you says it will be finished by the fiscal year, or will it be finished before December?
Yeah, that's the challenge. If it carries over into January, which, given how long it's taken, we can't apply for that as one of the CARES Act 3 funding projects, if you will. I'm not sure if it would be eligible regardless. Megan knows a little more than I do about the specific guidelines, but certainly fire services would be eligible, and again, you can displace the equipment for the services. But the equipment itself, I'm not sure would be eligible, but we can certainly look into that.
Well, I know we're preparing for some potential rainstorms and some potential issues up in the North Bench area. Perhaps we need equipment or some sort of loader, or
Yeah.
would that be something that would apply that we could purchase?
What they have kind of pointed us towards is information technology projects, if you will, that enhance our services to the public, allow us to use Zoom more efficiently, or communicate with our customers more efficiently because of the distance operations that a lot of folks are having to do. And so that's been kind of their focus and the guidelines, but we can certainly check to see if there's any potential for actual equipment.
Okay, Mr. Riddell, do you have any questions or comments?
No questions, no comments.
No, I was on the budget subcommittee that reviewed this, and it all was acceptable, and so I would make a motion to move this item and all of the sub items in this as 1, 2, and 3.
That's right.
Okay, we have a motion. Councilmember Duncan, do you have any questions or comments before we
So-
ask for the second?
Just one point, I'm sorry. Item A, like, I should have been more specific. Item 2A, we don't believe we are able to submit the ERP funding, or the ERP project for funding through the CARES Act 3. So staff would respectfully suggest that 2 be restricted to B, C, and D, and not A.
Okay.
So as,
Yeah, well, that's-
Good, Bobby.
so as it stands right now, the real estate market is doing fairly well. Property values haven't gone down since this started because our fiscal year last year was like March, April, May, or no, April, May, June. And, but this year, the first quarter, I haven't seen any drop in real estate value. Is that correct?
I think you're accurate relative to property values, yes.
And with the VLF, which is the second source of our revenue, that hasn't changed much, has it?
That, I don't know if we've looked at that carefully in terms of, I don't know if we have enough information at this point in time to.
Well, that's our second largest source, or is it sales tax, the second
I
largest
think
source?
VLF and sales tax are close to the, go ahead. But yeah, your point is well taken.
So then we dropped quite a bit there for about 3 months once the whole COVID nonsense started. But as the restaurants have adapted to outside, to doing everything in their power to continue earning money for us or for themselves, what are you thinking as far as like, are you looking at 50% loss in sales tax, 30% loss, or what are we thinking?
So far, the HDL forecast for this year has been pretty similar to what we saw the last quarter of last year, which was in the 15 to 20% last fiscal year. But they haven't submitted their local forecast yet. So far, it's just been a statewide forecast. We literally are expecting to see that in the next few days.
Okay, so it's not going to be devastating, as devastating as we may have thought. It's going to affect us, but it's not going to be so devastating. That's the impression I'm getting based on talking to the businesses.
Well, devastating in what way?
Well, I mean, the sales tax report we see like 2,200,000 in sales, but that's not the actual numbers, dollars that we get into our bank account, right?
That is the estimated amount that we get into our bank. It's a
That
little
is the
higher than that,
estimated
might be closer to 3, but yeah, that's the amount that we get in our bank account.
So maybe $400,000 less based on 15, 20%?
And that's probably close, and that's probably about the amount that we adjusted. Our budget this year compared to last year is about $400,000 less.
So that's not necessarily a devastating number. It is an easy number, but not a devastating number.
Okay? I think that's a fair statement. So,
Okay.
again, item number 3, the amending of the annual budget reflects the potential to submit for the CARES Act 3 allocation. That would have to be amended as well if we're not going to submit, and I don't think it's something that we're likely to be successful with. So the third action would have to be adjusted to reflect whether or not we're going to submit for CARES Act funding. So we have a replacement agenda or language if council would like to consider it, or we can certainly come back to you again. So alternate language could read something like amend the capital improvement program, and the reason for that is it would be a multi-year approach. Amend the capital improvement budget for miscellaneous one-time capital projects with an increase to expenditures in the amount of $359,000 in fiscal year 2020, 2021, $267,000 in fiscal year 2021, 22, and $292,000 in fiscal year 22, 23. Total of that is $918,000. for the purchase of Tyler Technologies Incorporated Enterprise Resource Planner software-related costs funded from the general fund balance. And essentially, that would be the general fund balance freed up from the CARES Act funding for the police services. And that would be effective beginning in the current fiscal year 2021. It is our belief that the $359,000 could be covered from the general fund monies freed up with the CARES Act 1 and 2 allocations.
So we would only use up that funding source if we do receive the CARES 3. We're not going to use it. We're not allocating funding that we're not going to receive, correct?
No, you would be allocating funding for phase 1, if you will, of the Tyler implementation from the general fund monies that are available because we've used CARES Act 1 and CARES Act 2 monies for the police services. So it wouldn't be additional general fund monies allocated beyond that for this fiscal year.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
I'm
Alrighty.
comfortable with
You
that.
you said you needed to amend
That's number
1A?
3.
Are you sure it's 1A that you need to amend?
I thought you said 2A.
2A is
yeah,
what he
2
said.
Okay.
2A, I said, would have to be amended because of the language relative to the total local match required, and the only reason that local match is up to $336,000 is because that it includes one-to-one share for the ERP funding. Now, it does say up to $336,000, so I guess you could leave it the way it is. It'll be significantly less than that, but you could leave the language the way it is for 2A if you like, because it says up to $336,000. But then section 3, action number 3, we would recommend this replacement language for that item.
I'm fine with both of those. I think that since it says up to, and it's specifically for that particular use, that's the conflict. But I'm fine with both the way it is now, since it can be significantly less.
With the replacement language for number 3.
Yeah, and the replacement language for number 3 is fine with me.
Okay, so we have a slightly amended motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have first and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Jennifer, will you take the roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Bogue,
Aye.
Councilmember Duncan,
Aye.
Councilmember Riddell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen,
Aye.
Mayor Avila.
Yes. Very good, it passes. All right, moving on to item number 7, amendment number 3, professional services agreement for consultant services, MV CHENG and Associates, and that'll be Mrs. Crawford.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As Ray just stated in his staff report, Misty and her team have been with the city since April, and she, along with her team, have been working very hard with city staff to complete all the various items listed on page 72 through 74 of your staff report. That list has been updated since we presented it to you in June, on June 8th. In addition, the consultant and our associates are in the process of submitting the 2018-19 and 19-20 Measure I funds, which is approximately $6.2 million that will come back to the city. The support, knowledge, and work product delivery provided by Missy and her team are imperative to address the finance-related challenges that we've had, and it's the goal, however, that we transition to eventually having city staff in place of the consultant. The Administrative Services Department and Finance Division staffing structure is being reviewed and will be presented to council for consideration during the mid-year budget review. On Tuesday, October 20th, as Mayor Pro Tem Allen stated, we met with the Finance Committee to review and discuss amending the budget for the item as part of the first quarter budget review. The fiscal impact in terms of the CARES Act authorizes the use of the funds to offset the 2021 general fund appropriations for public safety and other related expenses consistent with COVID-19 guidelines. Due to the CARES Act funding offset the general fund appropriations, there's adequate funding in the general fund budget to accommodate the consultant services for amendment number 3. The recommendation is that you authorize the city manager to execute Amendment Number 3 for professional services with Misty Cheng and Associates in the amount not to exceed $90,000. That's all I have, unless you have questions for me.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? Mr. Riddell?
No, but I'll move the item.
Ms. Allen?
I'll second.
Okay, we have first and second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, hearing none. Jennifer, we take a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Bogue?
Aye.
Councilmember Duncan?
Aye.
Councilmember Riddell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen?
Aye.
Mayor Avila?
Yes. All right, moving on to number 8, purchase of cloud-based enterprise resource planner, ERP, from Tyler Technologies, and I believe that'll be Jason Underwood.
Am I on? Okay. Good evening, Mayor and council members. Gosh, I should have brought my glasses. The item before you is for a cloud-based enterprise resource planner, which I will refer to as an ERP. An ERP is a collection of core processes such as finance, HR, payroll, permitting, code enforcement, planning, and so on, that are integrated into one single software operating system. A cloud-based ERP is a solution that's hosted in the cloud with 24 access to the software and services for staff and the public alike. All data is encrypted and stored in Tyler's data centers. Very little hardware is required on premise, and all data is accessible to authorized users anywhere, anytime. Storing the data in the cloud also dramatically reduces the risk of data loss due to ransomware or malicious software. The city currently uses 3 separate applications to operate these functions, the functions of an ERP. Each of these applications are over 13 years old. They don't include features offered in most modern products and are becoming more expensive to support. In addition, these systems require many manual workflows that require staff time and would not be needed with a new ERP. The COVID-19 pandemic has exposed many deficiencies in the current system as well, the most glaring being the lack of e-services, which include citizen self-service portals, online payments, modern reporting, dashboards, all commonly used services in modern applications not available in the city's current systems. As outlined in the Information System Strategic Plan approved in 2019, the new system is needed to fulfill the many modern needs required by citizens, staff, contractors, and anyone who wants to conduct business with the city. Over the last several years, and during the creation of the Information System Strategic Plan, the city staff has gathered requirements from users, investigated current available systems, and researched what systems are being used at other agencies. Tyler was the most used based on staff's research and investigation. Tyler is installed in over 100 cities in California and is currently winning over 80% of the bids for public agency ERPs. After seeing several demonstrations, conducting many phone interviews with other cities, using Tyler products, and visiting the city of Rancho Mirage, who recently implemented Tyler Munis Financials, and is undergoing a Tyler Intergov implementation now, staff concurs that Tyler is the best choice for the city of Yucaipa that will enable the city to provide many services to citizens 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and will also greatly reduce manual workflows that cause inefficiencies. Pursuant to the City of Yucaipa purchasing policy, the City Council may authorize the acquisition of the ERP system through a pre-negotiated contract. City has registered with Sourcewell Cooperative and is recommending utilizing the Sourcewell Cooperative contract. The city's finance manager has reviewed the Sourcewell contract and concurs that it complies with the city's purchasing policy. Combined with the additional due diligence performed by city staff and the discounts offered by Tyler for upgrading from Eden to Munis, utilization of the Sourcewell contract will likely be less expensive and more efficient than what could be obtained through a formal bid process. The implementation of the ERP will consist of 3 phases. Phase 1 would be finance, phase 2 would be HR and payroll, and phase 3 would be development services, or we call it community development. It is staff's goal to have the ERP fully implemented within 24 to 36 months. City staff would be responsible for 60 to 70% of the implementation, with Tyler staff leading the project. They would be responsible for the other 30 to 40%. Due to the COVID pandemic, Much of the implementation will be done remotely, which will result in reduced costs due to less travel for Tyler staff. Obviously, if somehow they are able to travel, right now they can't travel based on Tyler's policies. If they are able to travel, there may be some more money involved, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. City has included 612 hours of additional support services for the implementation. These hours can be used for modules that run over the scheduled timeframe and/or post-implementation training and support. These hours will be billed as used, and unused hours will not be billed. I do anticipate all of those hours being used. Also included in the proposed costs are outside consulting services that will include project management support. As mentioned in Mr. Casey and Mr. Blackerby's report, the funding for the entire project in the amount of $918,000 is being requested for approval using the CIP for miscellaneous projects for the life of the 3-year contract. Once fully implemented, the ongoing annual maintenance of the cost of $142,822 will replace the current budget appropriation of $47,400 for various software systems currently in use. That's what we pay right now for annual support for the products we use currently. So that will go away once the new products are in place and live. Okay. And that represents an increased cost per year of $95,422 for this greatly enhanced service. During the implementation, annual costs for the current software will remain in the budget. So, for example, we're anticipating the finance system taking 12 months. Once that's done, we'll terminate the contract with Tyler Eden, the current financial software. So we've got 2 action items, and Ray, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he covered them in the last report, but I'm just going to go through them. Approve the purchase of a cloud-based enterprise resource planner from Tyler Technologies and authorize the city manager to execute the design proposal, statement of work, and all necessary documents for the purchase and installation of an ERP from Tyler Technologies and associated consulting services in the amount of $918,000, funded by the Capital Improvement Program multi-year budget for miscellaneous one-time capital projects. Also authorize the city manager and the city attorney to make changes in the statement of work, and the software as a service agreement is needed. We're still going through some very minor, well, maybe minor changes in the agreements, but they're all just techie kind of stuff. Dave Snow's aware of it, and Ray. So we can certainly bring those back to council, but it's probably just very small stuff. And action item number 2 would be find that the public interest would not be best served by a formal proposal process, waive the formal solicitation of proposals, qualifications, and award the purchase of the ERP based on the proposal submitted by Tyler Technologies using the Sourcewell Cooperative Contract 10515 TTI, recently executed by other cities. I'll be glad to answer any questions once I catch my breath.
Thank you, Jason.
And
Are
if I
there
may
any-
just clarify very quickly.
Yes.
Again, that's intended to be $359,000 in fiscal year 2020, 2021, made available by the CARES Act funding that freed up some general fund monies we talked about, $267,000 in fiscal year 2021, 22, and $292,000 in fiscal year 22, 23. And those numbers also include the annual maintenance costs. Is that right, Jason?
Yes.
Yeah.
The first 3 years of maintenance are included in the contract. What would happen, I would imagine, is at the conclusion of that contract, we would go back to them and start another contract with them. I'm hoping this software is with us for a very long time, at least 8-10 years. So those costs would likely go up a little bit. It's usually about 5% based annually, unless you enter into a term contract with them again. So the plan would probably do another 3-year contract with them after this one is up.
All righty. Thank you very much. Are there any questions of staff? Mr. Riddell, do you have any questions or comments?
No questions, no comments.
Councilmember Allen?
I certainly agree and support the move to the enterprise resource planner. I think from everything you've said and what you told us at the budget subcommittee meeting as well, that Tyler sounds like it's the company to go with. I did have a question about additional user training after the product, goes live. It kept saying about going live in the contract, but you addressed that tonight with the extra 612 hours that you can utilize, as maybe our employees need it, because when it goes live, you turn on the green light, that's when people are really gonna want that hand holding. And it might, everybody might transition fairly quickly. What do you think for each of the phases is going to be the timetable for implementation? You're saying 24 to 36 months, so are you looking at maybe a year for each phase? Is that what you're anticipating?
Yes, typically, based on what Tyler is telling me and based on what I've seen from other cities, 12 months for finance, 12 months for HR payroll, and 12 months for Intergov, which is development services. We could overlap a little bit with HR payroll and development services because they're two separate teams. So that's a possibility, and that's why I mentioned 24. So we could potentially get it done in 24 months if budget is there and we're on task and we get all the other ones done. The most important thing first is finance, get that done, then everything kind of builds out off of there. I think we'll have a better idea once we're deep into the finance, how everything's gonna go.
And it makes sense to have phase one be finance. I mean, it just makes sense. So, no, I think it's long overdue, and our current system, I think you were telling us, is like 20, going on 20 years old, so,
City View's getting very close, yes.
yeah. So, those are my questions.
All right, any other questions? Mr. Bogue?
So item number 1 would require an amended number 1 per item, agenda item 6, correct?
Did I, yeah, I had the same question. 1 and 2 gets compressed into the revised item number 6, number 3?
Correct.
Is that essentially 1 and 2 is replaced by what was just read to us for agenda item 6, number 3?
Correct.
I can read for the record replacement language for 1 and 2, if you like, if that would be helpful. And Jason, if I missed by a little bit, let me know. Council, it's recommended that council approve the purchase of a cloud-based enterprise resource planner, ERP from Tyler Technologies, Inc. Authorize the city manager to execute the design proposal and statement of work, all necessary documents for the purchase and installation of an ERP from Tyler Technologies, Inc. In the total amount, this is a total amount of the $918,000 we talked about in the first budget, first quarter budget review, made up of, well, I'll finish this. For the purchase of Tyler Technologies, Inc., Enterprise Resource Planner, software and related costs funded from the general fund balance, effective beginning in the current fiscal year 2020-2021, in the amount of $359,000, fiscal year 2021-22, $267,000 and $292,000 in fiscal year 2022-23. That's the recommendation this evening, but then I'll also authorize the city manager and the city attorney to make changes in the statement of work and software as a service agreement. As Jason mentioned, we're working on some of the language as well. And then, so that would be items number 1 and 2 combined. Item 3 would be consistent with what's in your staff report.
Question?
Just one more clarification, because this is an integrated system that we're migrating to. It seems logical that our staff time for just normal day-to-day processes is going to be made much easier for everyone, because, they'll have finance, HR, they can all access that information from one piece of software. So about how much efficiency do you believe this will add to day-to-day operations?
It's hard to quantify that number, but it's going to be a lot. I think Ryan can attest as well. We both, when we went to Ransom or Roz, were just oohing and ahhing at all the ways that they created more efficiencies through the payroll process. I can give an example of their system. They reduced their payroll process by more than half. We currently have, I think, one employee that does payroll, and she spends about 75% of her time on payroll, and we anticipate that taking 2 days per payroll cycle if things go as we were being told. And I do trust the folks at Ransom Mirage. This isn't a salesperson telling us, this is people that are actually doing it. If you look at electronic plan submittal, that's going to save Sandy and Tammy a ton of time. They've seen the system, and again, they were very excited about it. Mobile inspections for building inspectors, mobile inspections for code enforcement officers. They won't have to come back and forth to the city every time they have to check on something, so they can do everything from the field. So I anticipate a lot of efficiencies gained from the system.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other questions? And we have a motion to approve,
So moved.
including the condensation of 1 and 2.
Yes, as read.
All right, do we have a second?
I'll second.
And a second. Are there any further discussions? I would just like to say, great, this is good. This will help us protect ourselves against potential hackers. This is another big positive step forward. I know that there's a neighboring city that experienced hackers through ransomware, and they paid a lot of money to get their stuff back. So this is definitely, if nothing else, this is going to protect our information system. So with that, if there's no further discussion, Jennifer, you take a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Bogue,
Aye.
Councilmember Duncan,
Aye.
Councilmember Riddell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen,
Aye.
Mayor Avila.
Yes. Okay, moving on to item number 9, SBI Local Partnership Program Grant Funding Agreement with the City of CALIMESA. And that will be Fermin Preciado.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor and council members. This item is regarding an agreement for the County Line Road Transportation Corridor Project. As you may have seen and may be aware, the vehicular traffic on County Line Road has continuously increased over the years, and currently the intersections between CALIMESA Boulevard and Bryant Street are impacted during peak morning and evening commuting hours. In 2017, the city of CALIMESA and Yucaipa staff initiated discussions regarding a joint project. That project became the County Line Road Corridor Project. This project extends over 1.5 miles from CALIMESA Boulevard to Bryant Street, and it is made up of several different components or several different smaller projects. And over the years, both cities have been applying for grant funding to construct the overall project. The ATP grant program funds were obtained by the city of Yucaipa several years ago, and that project has been completed. The MSRC grant-funded project, those funds were obtained by the city of Yucaipa, and that project is currently in the design phase. And the LPP SB1 grant program, that application, the city of CALIMESA took the lead on with support from the city of Yucaipa. And in 2018, the city, both cities became aware that that application had been approved. The exhibit on the screen before you shows the various segments of the project. The segments in purple are the LPP SB1 grant-funded components, and the segment in green is the ATP component, which was completed last year, and in orange is the MSRC funded project, which is a component of that is part of the LPP, but it's labeled as the MSRC project. And again, that one is in the design phase right now. In December of 2017, the City Council approved the fair share agreement between the City of Yucaipa and CALIMESA, and that delineated the obligations and funding responsibilities for each city with respect to the ATP and the MSRC project. You'll notice on the screen that the LPP component of the project includes the roundabout intersection improvements. And that's from Bryant, California, 2nd, 3rd, and also 5th Street. As a result of several traffic studies that were completed in 2013 and adopted by the City Council, the city's general plan does identify the roundabouts at these intersections, not only along County Line Road, but also on Avenue E. The construction of a couple of the roundabouts on Avenue E was recently completed. And as council's aware, the construction of roundabouts instead of traffic signals, it does allow for certain segments of arterial streets to remain 2 lanes in the ultimate condition instead of 4. County Line Road is one of those. So as you can see on the screen, the segment of County Line Road from Bryant to 4th Street can remain 2 lanes, 1 in each direction, with the roundabouts at these intersections. With standard traffic signals, that segment of County Line Road would have to be 4 lanes, 2 lanes in each direction, and a continuous center turn lane. Another benefit of the roundabouts and the 2 lanes on arterial streets is the right-of-way acquisition, the right-of-way costs, and also construction costs. This exhibit shows the right-of-way that would be required between Bryant Street and 3rd Street for 4 lanes. This next exhibit, it's kind of difficult to see the blue, but you can see the pink is for the 4 lanes, and the blue is a right-of-way that would be required for 2 lanes. This shows the right-of-way requirements for 2 lanes a little better. But as you can see on the previous exhibit, that's the difference in the amount of right-of-way that would be required for 2 lanes versus 4 lanes. This table shows the difference in right-of-way and construction costs for both alternatives. As you can see, the cost for the construction and right-of-way for 2 lanes is about half of the cost for the 4 lanes and standard traffic signals. As I mentioned, City CALIMESA did apply for the LPP grant funding, and they have taken the lead with the design for the project, the design, engineering, and also the environmental review. Both cities are currently working on the right-of-way acquisition for the project. The total amount of funding that was approved as part of the LPP was $3,747,000, which is 50% of the total estimated construction cost for the project. The proposed grant funding agreement, it does identify both cities' share of that grant funding. And according to the agreement, the Yucaipa share of the funding is about $2.1 million. And that also identifies the city of Yucaipa's local match requirement of about $4.4 million. The city of CALIMESA's share of the grant funding is about $1,647,000, and their local match contribution is about $1.9 million. The agreement also identifies that the city of CALIMESA will take the lead with the construction of the project as far as going out to bid and contracting with the contractor. The city of Yucaipa will be part of the overall construction management process. But before the city of CALIMESA can obtain the approval from Caltrans in January of 2021 to start the construction, there's a couple things that need to be completed. One of them is the right-of-way certification, which needs to be completed, and city staff is working with the city of CALIMESA and their consultant to complete that by the first week of November. The other requirement that is needed is the proposed funding agreement before you tonight needs to be in place in order to submit for approval from Caltrans. The current balance in the fiscal year 2021 capital improvement program budget for the County Line Road project is $5,057,000. So there is sufficient funding available to accommodate staff, to accommodate the city of Yucaipa's local match contribution for the project. This project will enhance the circulation on County Line Road, and as was mentioned earlier tonight, it will also promote the economic development along the County Line Road corridor and along the other streets adjacent to or perpendicular to County Line Road, Bryant, California, 3rd and 4th Street. That concludes my report. Staff's recommendation is that City Council approve and review and approve the SB1 Local Partnership Program Grant Funding Agreement for the County Line Road Corridor Improvement Project from CALIMESA Boulevard to Bryant Street, and also authorize the city manager to execute and administer the terms of the agreement. That concludes my report, and staff is available for questions you may have.
Thank you, Fermin. Are there any questions of staff? Mr. Riddell?
No questions.
Ms. Allen?
No.
Mr. Duncan?
No?
Mr. Bogue?
Has there been any right-of-way acquisitions up to this point?
Yes, over the last 18 months, I think you've considered a couple of opportunity acquisitions, and I think we even purchased there's 2 full takes. There were 2 full takes identified within the city of Yucaipa, and the city has purchased those properties and will be dedicating the right-of-way and coming back to you in the future for the disposition of the remainder of those properties.
Do you know anything about CALIMESA? Have they had any right-of-way acquisition?
They have been. I know that they also had 2 full takes, and based on our conversations, they're on track to certifying the right-of-way, which means that they have extended an offer to the property owners for all the right-of-way that's required, and we plan on doing that, having that completed by the first week of November.
I'll move the item.
We have a first. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have first and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Jennifer, take roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Bogue,
Aye.
Councilmember Duncan,
Aye.
Councilmember Riddell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen,
Aye.
Mayor Avila.
Yes. All right, moving on to item number 10, El Dorado Fire Mitigation and Storm Season Preparation, including resolution number 2020-64. Before we begin this discussion, I must announce that this is within my, I live in the North Bench and it's impacting me personally, so there's a conflict of interest with respect to the resolution. And just in order to economy of scale here, I'm going to step away from both parts of this, and I'm going to turn over the chair to the vice chair now. Thank you.
All right, so we'll go ahead and proceed with item number 10. Is this for me?
Yes, thank you. Again, this item is regarding the El Dorado Fire Mitigation and Storm Season Preparation Resolution. This item was brought before you several weeks ago on October 12th, and at that time, council was not able to take action on one of the 3 recommendations presented at that time for this item. On September 6th of this year, the city manager proclaimed a local emergency due to the El Dorado fire here in Yucaipa. Several watersheds in Yucaipa were affected by the fire, including Wilson Creek, Spore Creek, and Oak Glen Creek. Staff has continued to assess the fire burn areas and has also been working and preparing for the upcoming winter storm season. We've been working with our partners, County Flood Control, the Natural Resources Conservation Services, and also meeting with the private property owners here within the city and also outside the city limits. The post-fire watershed assessments conducted in the burn areas, they did identify on-site and downstream threats to public health and safety from storm debris flows during rain events. So staff has prepared the map that's on the screen before you showing those areas of concern. On October 12th, the City Council did approve a budget in the amount of $185,000 for the El Dorado Firestorm season preparation project. And that project does include mitigation measures to prepare for the upcoming storm season. Over the last 2 weeks, staff has been implementing the measures that were approved, and they include the purchasing of sandbags, purchasing signage and other traffic control devices to notify the residents of the potential hazard. And we've also been working to establish staging areas near these areas of concern for more efficient response to these areas. Those staging areas would be to stage equipment and also have sandbags available for the public. We've also been purchasing concrete barriers or K-rail for stormwater and debris diversion. And we've updated all of our on-call contracts with local contractors for placement of K-rail and emergency grading work that will be required. This next exhibit is it's an attachment to the report, and it shows the areas of concern. It's a little difficult to see the red up here in this area, but those red areas are where we have placed K-rail at this point, and we plan to place additional K-rail when we receive it. We have placed that order, and these areas in blue are areas where we are considering doing channel clearing or increasing the capacity of those drainage areas to help divert the storm flows away from homes and private property. The areas in green are the possible staging areas for, as I mentioned earlier, for materials and equipment and sandbags. This exhibit just shows the Oakland Road and Pendleton Road area. Again, showing identifying the same items, the location for the proposed K-rail and also the channel clearing locations. Staff will continue to process and purchase the K-rail that is part of the project. The Yucaipa Municipal Code does permit the City Council to direct the City of Yucaipa's purchasing officer to expend the sum of money that's budgeted and required in an emergency with no further compliance with the public contract procedures upon approval of a resolution by a 4/5 vote. So in order to be able to further implement the measures and the measures that are being proposed and to do that in advance of the storm season, and also to be able to put several additional contracts in place with contractors to respond to emergencies, staff is recommending that council adopt resolution number 2020-64. I do want to mention that staff is also working with, continuing to work with NRCS on a co-op agreement for NRCS to fund emergency watershed protection measures to relieve hazards or damages caused by the fire in Yucaipa. We're hoping that that will result in the agreement that we can bring back to council at a later date and have to be able to have them assist the city financially to perform some of this other work. And as part of that agreement, if based on our previous experience, the city of Yucaipa would be responsible for 25% of the costs, and NRCS would pay for 75% of the cost of those efforts. Staff will continue to meet with the property owners in the North Bench area and areas to the south to assist them with the resources that are available to them to prepare for the storm season. And I also wanted to mention, it was mentioned earlier, but City of Yucaipa staff is planning on attending the El Dorado Fire Resource Fair in Oak Glen tomorrow. We will have a table or a booth there set up to be able to answer questions from the residents and be able to share information regarding resources and what the city's plan is to prepare for the upcoming storm season. So staff is recommending that City Council approve the recommendations that's listed in the agenda report for this item, and that concludes my report, and staff is available for questions.
Any questions of staff? Councilman Riddell?
Yeah, is this a national emergency? Is there emergency funds that could be spent on this project?
The funds that I mentioned that NRCS may be able to provide, that's the funding that would be available for this kind of work. We have submitted a letter requesting those funds. They asked us to put together a plan and a cost estimate for the mitigation measures, and we have submitted that to them. So those are the funds that would be available for this.
Okay.
Councilman Duncan? Councilman Bo?
No.
Do we have a motion?
I'll move. Yeah.
I'll second.
I've got a motion and a second. Jennifer, would you do a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Bogue,
Aye.
Councilmember Duncan,
Aye.
Councilmember Riddell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen,
Aye.
Mayor Avila.
And invite the mayor back in. And we'll go on to the next item when he arrives, item number 11.
Thank you, Denise. All right, moving on to item number 11, Public Art Mural and Roundabout Art Feature, and Margot Mullen. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Okay. Good evening, Mayor and council members. I am here this evening to talk about the recommendations we have for your review from the Public Art Committee regarding the 2 opportunities to continue the development of public art in the Uptown area. As we all know, public art is not only a great conversation starter, it also brings economic opportunity to that specific place. As the city of Yucaipa and the citizens have invested in the revitalization of this specific area with road improvements, a performing arts center, and creating culture through free special events located in the heartbeat of Yucaipa, these 2 projects have the ability to help drive our economic development and create community through public art. So over this past year, the Public Arts Committee has worked with artist Allison Brown to create a mural design. This is located on page 191 in the packet. Allison has a degree in design and illustration. She has worked with Haddis Public Murals in Los Angeles and has gone to work on several murals throughout Los Angeles, the Inland Empire, Temecula Valley, San Diego, and more. So here is a slide. Allison is here with us today. And so in our next slide here is an example of one of the, you may have seen one of our recent pieces. It's up on the Yucaipa High School. That's one of our more recent murals here in the area. So on October 20th, 2020, the mural design was approved by the Historic Uptown Association, subject to council approval. The mural will be installed on the south wall of the Old Little Theater building located at 12135 California Street. Prior to installation, repairs will be made to the mural site. And its anticipated repair work will take place in mid-August, and the mural work will begin in September. So as you're seeing here, that's the side of the mural there. That's the wall. And this next slide here is the proposed mural design. The colors are not justified here on this screen, just so you know. So this design incorporates the idea of past, present, and future, as the Public Arts Committee would like for everyone to feel included and have the opportunity to find a part of themselves in the mural, whether that be from the iconic Yucaipa landscape, the local floral and fauna, to the green parrots that you see in the background that fly around Yucaipa's open space, for which so many people come here to enjoy. There are 2 unique aspects to this mural. One of them are the musical notes. So if someone who has the ability to read music, they could go up there literally with their musical instrument and play that song. And That song is inspired by the band from Alabama, and the song title is called Pass It On Down. And the second part of this mural is there is an interactive butterfly wings that you kind of see right here at the bottom part of that mural. And so visitors and locals can interact with that piece, take selfies, and really help enliven that the uptown area through social media and pictures. This mural will not only bring more life to the space, but as I just mentioned, it'll promote this area. The artist, Allison, she is here with us tonight if you have any questions of her or of staff.
Thank you. Before we ask any questions of staff, does the artist have anything to say? Does she want to make a presentation? Then after her presentation, we do have one speaker, Kit. You're in the batter circle.
I don't have anything specifically prepared, but just to reiterate what Margot has said, this was a collaboration with the Public Arts Committee, some of which are here in attendance tonight. We certainly wanted to tap into the heritage of what Yucaipa represents as far as family and legacy. Also to encourage, as she said, the future promotion of embracing our natural environment, the beauty that surrounds us, and also the local iris flower, which is a representative of Yucaipa, and the butterfly, as you know, which is also memorable when we do get to see those, the migration. The lowest butterfly is actually human size, so someone could stand right in the center and become the butterfly, and that's the promotion of a selfie, as well as the music notes, as she mentioned. I incorporated a combination of both graphic realism and folk art to, again, embrace those different feels of standard of a culture, of artistic quality, as well as the community folk art feel of being a small town, you know, embracing our environment and our country feel. I want to recognize that I do have a lot of experience in fine art, and when I paint murals, they are not only meant to be seen from a distance, and then as you get closer, they're disillusioned by, you know, big brushstrokes. But essentially, when you come up closer, you see all the detail that is put in. I use an array of brushes and materials so that it's interactive from a distance as well as up close, which makes it a mesmerizing experience for people to recognize what effort is putting in, how many colors are combined to create this almost surreal experience, something they can walk into and feel a part of. So that is the goal, and I think that's what we were hoping to achieve.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, please.
Allison, how much did this painting evolve? I know you went through committee, and I'm sure people had different ideas.
There was definitely a process involved. It started with a simple discussion of what do we want for our city, and some certain ideas were mentioned, especially the iris flower became a feature. I personally, being a resident of Yucaipa for over 18 years now, feel a personal connection. I am an avid hiker, so nature is very personal to me. This fire was heartbreaking, to say the least. And so I really wanted to embrace what I call the oasis of Southern California, how we are surrounded by such beautiful hills and mountains. I feel it's a special place, and I wanted to feel encompassing. So as I began, I definitely felt this sense of legacy. You know, as we invest in our city and the culture of our city, I wanted to recognize those who have built Yucaipa and preserved the beauty of Yucaipa from the past, and how we want to continue that legacy into the future. So it became a process of how do we express that through images. There was multiple ideas, and there was definitely collaboration of what was working and what was speaking that. So there was multiple redesigns, but in the end, I think this is something that will speak to the multitudes of both old and young. Everybody can feel a part of it and get embrace what I believe is a representation of Yucaipa.
Very good.
I have a question, a comment too. On the one that was in our agenda packet, the way that it printed out, the flowers on the left were a lot more bold and
Yeah,
kind of.
much brighter, yes.
But they kind of drew your attention to them and kind of detracted from the rest of the picture. But the way that it is up here, and it looks really nice, and I think you did a great job. And so I like the lyrics, I like the music going through it, and anyway, I congratulate you on your work, and I'm sure it's gonna look
Thank you.
wonderful on the side
Yeah.
of that building.
Yeah, I take personal, just to add that I take it very seriously that what I express in a design is what I get. That's why we take the time to do quality design work so that you are not feeling it's a guessing game when it comes to the artwork and it's not a finger crossed situation, but that you can feel confident that you will get a quality product in the end.
And the butterfly's a very nice touch.
I'm sorry?
The butterfly at the bottom is a
Yes.
really nice
Yeah,
touch.
that was a fun idea.
The surface of that wall, I noticed here on this picture, you've got windows in there, but that wall is horrible palette.
It is a very challenging wall.
Are you gonna, is the paint going to be able to stay, are you gonna paint right over the glass?
So I have a few ideas that I've been brainstorming as we've been talking about this over the year of how I can create the most efficacious idea and without disturbing the design. So I have a few proposals. I don't want to make claims that I can't confirm, but I do believe the owner of the building mentioned that perhaps we can close up the bottom windows. I'm not exactly sure. We don't know. We're still working on that. But an idea I had to keep the design going, if you could see the upper windows, is mostly sky or mountains. So there's not a lot of detail except for the far left corner. Because of that high contrast, I was proposing the idea of getting a custom fit screen in each of those windows and painting on the screen to not deter the view from inside, but to continue the design. It won't be an exact match. I mean, I will use the same paint colors, but because it's a screen, it will be slightly shaded. But it will continue the design, and because it's a high contrast between the mountainside and the sky, it will continue your eye and you almost forget that they're there. So that is one design aspect that we are proposing so that it's not a bunch of rectangular holes in the mural. If you recognize on the actual wall, there's poles there. So I will be painting around those poles to continue the design. That will take extra work to, yeah, so there's a few things, but that's kind of the magic of murals is we can make a lot of that disappear through a lot of effort. It will take time and effort to make those fade into the background. And again, that's the goal of having a bold and beautiful design so that's what you see, that's what you notice, and some of these aspects that are more of a challenge will fade away and you kind of recognize they're there, but they're not a feature or a deterrent.
Are these windows not ever going to be opened again?
Again, that's something we'll need to confirm again with the owner, what he wishes, but I believe, I'm sorry, the conversation happened a few months ago, so it would be good to reconfirm, but he mentioned that the upper windows would be nice to stay open, but the lower ones he was happy to close and board up, which means I would paint right over. That was, I think, a conversation we had. I need to reconfirm that, but that means the lower windows would not be available for use. I also propose we remove all the shutters just so we have a bit smoother of a wall. However, the stucco is not an issue. I've painted on brick and stucco and smooth walls. So I'm quite experienced with what kind of paint is needed, the exterior paint, the primer, everything as far as prep work goes as well, so.
So will the paint wear differently on the glass and on the wood than it will on the stucco?
I won't be painting on any actual glass. It would be on the screen. So there would be a screen in front of the glass, so he could still open and close the windows and have a view outside. So it would be the screen I would be painting on.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go ahead and ask our speaker.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry.
Oh,
before-
I'm sorry.
You may want to ask staff to finish the rest of the discussion, the rest of the staff report relative to the second piece.
Oh, I'm
before-
sorry.
Kit may want to speak on both issues, I'm not sure. So.
Thank you.
Hi again. So our next project is the roundabout. So on March 13th, 2020, city staff in coordination with the Public Art Committee released a request for proposal qualifications for a roundabout public art design concept. 2 proposals were received by the due date April 9th, 2020. Similar to the mural and the current roundabout pieces, this project aims to benefit the local residents as well as those traveling to the local region by way of creative placemaking. So in the RFP we have objectives and key themes for the public art piece that the successful submission will demonstrate. And those are the cohesiveness of design between the landscape and the artwork, creatively reflect the arts and cultural hub of historic Uptown Yucaipa community, embody the values and art of culture inspired by the Yucaipa Performing Arts Center and the many free special events held in the city, and also inspired by our agriculture, history, and our wildlife. And our last one here is directing visitors to the historic Uptown Yucaipa. So in addition to these public art objectives and key themes, the Public Art Committee used the following for the selection of artwork of durability and safety. And those are as follows. The artwork should be designed in the round to be equally intriguing from all angles, must improve and not detract from the safety of the site, must not create a disorienting situation or cause of distraction for drivers. The artwork should be scaled to the attention of the approaching drivers, which should not be so detailed that it requires up-close or extended inspection for appreciation. Must be fabricated in durable, permanent outdoor media that is safe and easily maintained and proven its visibility in public installations. Be able to withstand snowfall and high winds. Be constructed to reasonably discourage or deter theft and vandalism, and be suitable for public viewing of all ages. Now the next section here is, we had our guidelines here, our artist proposal rating guide, and these are the guides that the Public Art Committee took into consideration while looking at the proposals. Those are the experience and qualifications, so providing examples of the artist's history of large-scale public artwork, successfully demonstrates an understanding of these objectives and key themes that we just spoke about. Project personnel and team. So to have this experience with depth and availability of adequate personnel for the project team, including experience with dual lane roundabout geometric design. Our third part here is understanding the project scope and approach for that design. So does the proposal thoroughly describe an approach to delivery, a quality project addressing all of the elements of the project scope? Have they addressed all the items in the selection and artwork durability and safety? So our fourth here is the objectives and key themes. So does the proposal demonstrate an understanding of these key themes? Does the proposal include a low maintenance, water efficient, well-lit design that ensures safety and sustainability? And lastly, the proposal content and completeness of the information submitted. Did they respond to all the questions that are required in the RFP? Have they supplied sufficient information to complete the evaluation? The proposals have been reviewed and evaluated by the Public Art Committee, and Nico Meyer has been recommended as the artist for the Historic Uptown Roundabout Public Art Project, which is on page 193, attachment C. On April 21st, 2020, the Historic Uptown Association was informed about the roundabout public art. City staff will return to the Historic Uptown Association once a rendering for all the roundabout art design is complete. Based on the timing of the roundabout construction project, the scheduling of the construction of the art feature may be reassessed and adjusted. Staff is currently working on grant funding opportunities to cover the costs associated with the roundabout artwork. Having conceptual designs shelf-ready is an important part of that process, and the final design and construction phases for public art will not proceed unless and until additional funding has become available. So you'll notice in Attachment C the experience and design concepts from the recommended artist, Nico Meyer. And Nico is here today, and he will give a brief overview of himself and his work. And Nico and staff are available for any questions.
Thank you. I guess we can invite Mr. Meyer up now. Welcome.
Thank you. So here's a brief overview. So I'm an engineer and an artist. I have a PE in California, so it really helps like being able to develop and really push the limits on what you can do on sculpture, like really understanding the forces, what can be done, and how to do it efficiently. So you take a given budget and really do something big with it. Go ahead. Okay, next slide. Oh, interesting. Maybe because is it PDF? No. Is this the other one?
So I guess in the meantime, Nico, was it a long drive to get here?
It wasn't too bad. A little bit over an hour. So this is a recent installation, just to give it a rough concept. I have done, so this is a piece that was installed in Kansas City earlier this year. Full design for snow loads and ice loads. It's Kansas City weather, right? It's probably a little bit more extreme, although the winds and the earthquakes here are still significant. So just to give you an idea, that is, it's about 13 feet tall. It's a large sculpture, $40,000 project. So just give an idea of what I have done. I did all the design work and built the whole thing. So the concept for the roundabout is balancing the brighter flame. This is, of course, before the fire, so hopefully that doesn't land too bad. But so it is a pretty big scale. It's 25 feet total height. The center piece is basically like a three-dimensional star, trying to represent like a torch or a flame that you guys have created over the last, I don't know exactly how many years, but I understand you're very proud of the legacy that you've created, and like the balance in the balance of lifestyles and the balance of the community. So that's really what the overall concept is. So these pillars are about 15 feet tall, and then the overall piece is 16 feet tall, which is, this is exemplative of, and it's about 7.5 feet above the ground. So the big concept is the balance of the community is critical to the continuation of the flame that lights the path to a better future. So that's the overall theme of the piece. So it's that centerpiece is it's like a three-dimensional star. And I don't know if you guys want to pass this around with the COVID stuff, but it's hard to capture in like the renderings and images. But it's a stellated dodecahedron, which is some geometric terms. And then it twists, and there's basically a weave that is created in these arms. And so there's like an outer connection at the tips, and then an inner connection inside. And so you get this like almost like a hidden weave that supports the overall structure. It's just to try to represent like what it really takes for a community to work. There's all sorts of unseen things that really bind a community together. You can go forward. So in general, there's basically 4 structural elements. You get the foundation, the pillars, and then the cables, and then the centerpiece. I'm just going through the general materials for the centerpiece. The exact material, I'm not sure if I'm going to use like an epoxy, fiberglass / carbon fiber composite system, an aluminum or a steel. But it'll all be designed 25-year plus design life. And it'll be designed to take on those snow and wind loads. So the pillars, it is supposed to be representative, and I don't know exactly how the final look will be once I have a better understanding of the exact layout and the color tones and stuff like that, how I want to represent like the pillars of the community that hold up this light. But basically the arts and sculpture, the landscape, the history, agriculture, family, and then the natural lifestyle. So that's the concept of the pillars here. And then the balance between them that is able to keep this thing up, as well as the balance of the internal main piece. So it's described there. And then the overall concept, this brighter flame, is like the communion with reality and the light of truth that makes like sustainable progress. Everyone wants to talk about progress, but if you're not aligned with truth and reality, like it's not sustainable at all. And so like, I don't know, based on what I understand of Yucaipa, you guys have done a great job in making this happen. And so like basically create this overall object that represents this bright light, and you got to keep it aflame. So like kind of passing the torch, having this beautiful thing, and like keeping it going. So yeah, that's my pitch.
All right, I guess,
I have a question, and Greg might be able to chime in on it, but we have a piece of art on display in our California Street roundabout, and it's constructed of Corten steel. Is that an option?
It can be. It's going to come down to cost. It is kind of an ambitious size for the budget. So it's going to depend on the cost of that material. But that's something I can look at.
What do you think, Greg?
Well, this roundabout is currently, it's not funded at this point.
No, if I may speak.
I only bring that up just because any kind of art that's going to have any cost to it's going to need to be elevated to a certain, which will add additional cost to the roundabout itself. So just keep in mind that it won't be able to sit flat on the ground.
Right. No, I agree.
End up driving through it or something.
Absolutely. In terms of the funding, as council is aware, we have continued to look for those opportunities for grant funding for these kinds of projects, not only for the art, but also the transportation elements. We think with the skip financing, some of the traffic facility funds that would be necessary for projects like this that aren't already allocated might be accelerated with a 70-unit project that will result in skip funding in November, and the Woodside Homes project that you've talked about tonight. Also moving forward with skip financing, that's likely to come about in January or February. So we do see potential for additional traffic facility funds for the roundabout construction if council decides that is a high priority.
And these kinds of projects can be used on all the roundabouts that we have at this time.
Correct.
Perhaps we could give one to CALIMESA.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's all I have.
Mr. Dunn?
So at the 2nd Street roundabout, we have a 3-sided sign that sort of reflects kind of what Yucaipa is or was, where we've come from, and what we are as far as a rural community. And then at California Street, we have a apple picker, a tree, which sort of symbolizes, again, where we've come from. And I'm not sure I can relate to what this is supposed to say at the top of the boulevard.
So it is much more of an abstract piece, and it is. I mean, we can honor the past with all three. I don't see an issue with that. But in general, it's more about the current state and how you pass the torch on to the next generation or several generations. So it's not. It wasn't meant to be focused on the historical, but if that's what you guys want, that's fine.
This isn't an actual approval of the design at this point, is it?
Correct. This evening is just approving the artist, and then the artist will go back and meet the Public Arts Committee
And when they will work together as they did with Allison on the mural. And that took 8 or 9 months to get to a final product that they were ready to present to the Historic Uptown Association and then ultimately to City Council. And so the process will be similar to that of the mural.
You know, I really like it. Art is supposed to leave some to the imagination. And I really think that it's an imaginative piece of a work. And I get that it's a piece of public art. And I think that people are going to derive quite a few different things from the piece that you've presented. So I mean, I really like it. And again, it's art, and art speaks to different people in different ways, and that's what art does. So, yeah, I think that, you know, you could go a lot of different ways, but for one, I really like what you've presented here.
So we're not approving the design, we're approving what? Help me understand.
We're approving the artist, and he's going to go sit through a committee, and I'm sure Allison will attest that
And just
what's originally proposed may not end up being.
Yeah.
And just to kind of wrap up this staff report, because it was 2 pieces brought together, this evening staff is asking City Council to approve the final mural design submitted and approve the selection of Nico Meyer as the artist for the Yucaipa Boulevard Bryant Street Roundabout Up Art feature. And staff can answer any questions that you may have at this time, as that concludes our report.
Okay, before we seem to got a lot of the questions out of the way and comments, I'd like to go ahead and bring up Kit. Kit, your last name is Sater? Satry, I'm sorry.
I've met all of you several times before. I have lived here in town for almost 40 years, so I'm kind of dedicated to the feel of it, to be a resident here. And I was really invested in the mural because I wanted it to really represent the feel of this town. There's been a lot of progress, a lot of development, but there's still a certain rural feel to it, and I think we did capture that on the mural. The combination of the butterflies that are on there happen to be painted ladies. So we're trying to make sure that the content of the picture is native to Yucaipa. And then the iris, we specifically put those on there. And then if you noticed in the middle towards the back, we put some grapevines so that we kind of see the future of some of the wineries and some of the grape fields that are going in. But we also we enhanced the mountains in the background and kind of show that you can hike in the hills locally. You can hike up in the mountains, and just kind of the overall feel of that. A couple of the other art pieces in town do have a little more masculine feel, so you might say the mural has a little more of a feminine feel to it, just to kind of balance that out some. And then on the music, she did mention that that is the actual song lines for the song by Alabama, and so anybody who knows music can kind of walk right up with a guitar and actually play that. But we wanted to link the picture together with the whole feel of the Uptown area with the Performing Arts Center there. And so that's one reason we included the musical script on there. And then we just in general wanted the picture to kind of have a sense of the feel of the lay of the land here in Yucaipa. So any questions on that? Thank you.
Thank you.
You asking me?
Mr. Riddell, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I do. My taste in art is very simple, and I really don't have much appreciation for these sculptures that were suggested here. That's just a personal thing, but I really don't appreciate those things that much. Mine is very simple, and I kind of lean towards the historical stuff for Yucaipa. I've been here for almost 40 years, and I'd like to kind of capture what Yucaipa is all about, and I think it was Duncan that said the one on 2nd Street and the one in California really depicted our historical heritage pretty good. So I'm kind of hooked on that concept. If something like that could be presented for this roundabout, I think I would. Of course, I admit I'm not a connoisseur of art, but my taste in art is very simple. So I really would appreciate something from the historical vein, something very simple.
If I could confirm, we're getting,
Your time is up. You're not here.
Okay.
You can't respond. Thank you so much
Okay.
for your comments. Appreciate it. Any
Well,
comments? for Mr.
again,
Dill?
I think that what we're doing here tonight is approving the mural and then approving the artist to work with the committee. So I'm good with that. We'll see what he comes up with and then what the council wants to move forward. So I would go ahead and motion to move approval of the item as presented.
I concur. I think the committee will iron out all the details on what the art is. I think at this point, he's showing us his capabilities and so forth.
Okay, we have a
Now
first.
we're just voting on the mural and the artist for the roundabout, huh?
That's correct.
Okay.
Did you move?
Yes, that was my motion.
Okay, I'll second.
We have a first and a second. Mr. Meyer, you get a sense of the direction that the public seems to be wanting to go to?
Oh, well, I think that's only a couple of people, so,
Well, there's still a sense, and
well, I don't
let me
agree with
put-
that,
let me-
so.
Let me add that sense. So anyway, without further discussion, we'll go ahead and take a roll call vote. Jennifer? if you
Councilmember
don't
Bogue,
mind.
Aye.
Councilmember Duncan,
No.
Councilmember Riddell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen,
Aye.
Mayor Avila.
Yes. Okay, we're moving on to item number 12. The financial participation agreement for the construction of the Wilson 3 Basin Project with San Bernardino Valley Municipal Water District. Assistant City Manager Landon Kern presents.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. Thank you. This item is before us is for the proposed funding agreement between the city and San Bernardino Valley Municipal Water District. I'll refer to them as Valley District moving forward. It is for Valley District's financial participation toward the construction of the Wilson 3 Basin Project. The slide before you that I'll keep up as I highlight the features of this report is an exhibit that shows the overall Wilson 3 project that we've seen before. Through the development of the project, the city has been meeting with other agencies, including water agencies, in order to facilitate the design and construction of the proposed Wilson 3 improvements. Valley District is one of these partnerships that has resulted from this coordination effort with a focused effort on the groundwater recharge components of the project, and kind of focuses on a part of creating our sustainable future that we just heard about from that previous report there. On the slide before you, I'll attempt to highlight some areas of this project that are focused on the groundwater. We have several different areas, one being in this area, in the main basin area before the outlet to the downstream area. There are 2 areas in the upstream channel, and then also an area as the Oak Glen Creek confluences in with the Wilson Creek in this area, for a total of 4.5 acres that have been identified with these phase 1 improvements of the project that are a part of this proposed agreement. For this reason, Valley District and the city have been discussing Valley District's financial participation in the construction of this initial phase 1 components of the project. At Valley District's June 11th, 2020 meeting, Board of Directors workshop, that is, the board recommended financial participation in the project, and as a result, the city has applied for and requested upfront upfront funding through the Valley District's Local Resources Investment Program, the LRIP program. So our application was through that program, but specifically requesting the upfront funding. As a historical example, the city's Wildwood Creek Basin project was also constructed in part with funding through a very similar upfront funding agreement between the city and Valley District in the amount of $590,000 for that project. And as with past agreements of this kind, this agreement that is part of tonight's recommendations is based on an estimated groundwater recharge. It's made up of passive and active recharge in those areas that make up the 4.5 acres. And it's estimated that it's approximately 1,000 acre feet per year that would be captured as a part of this project. And that is part of the basis for the recharge performance criteria that's summarized and included as a part of the proposed agreement. The proposed agreement includes Valley District funding for the Wilson 3 project as a one-time upfront contribution in the amount of $1,843,000 and $1,843,850, just over 1.8 million. And with that estimated total amount of acre feet, that's approximately $172 per acre foot of recharge. The proposed agreement requires the city to operate and maintain the groundwater recharge elements of the project and provide a report of the annual measured stormwater recharge for each of the first 10 years of what is typically a 20-year term. There would be stream gauges installed at different locations throughout the project that would provide the basis for those measurements and those metrics that are going to demonstrate the meeting the performance criteria. And once again, that performance criteria is based on an estimate of approximately 1,000 acre feet per year for a total performance metric in the amount of 10,700 acre feet of recharge that is expected to occur in approximately the first 10 years of this agreement. If the first 10 years we don't reach that threshold, we would be able to continue to report annually until that goal is met. It's important to note that this agreement and financial contribution from Valley District covers the Phase 1 Wilson 3 improvements only. It does not include the future Phase 2 improvements that are downstream of the 2nd Street location. The city has also requested as a part of a separate application for Valley District's financial contribution toward the future Phase 2 Wilson 3 groundwater recharge improvements in the amount of $1.3 million. And that would be coming back as a part of a separate council action in the future. With that, unless there's anything else staff would like to add, that concludes my presentation, and we're available for any questions you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions of staff? Mr. Riddell?
I approve the overall project. I think it's a fine project. As everybody knows, I'm not a fan of the hard bottom basin there at just before the dam, the main basin. I'm not a fan of that hard bottom, but I've been outvoted on it numerous occasions. But I do approve of the overall project, so I am going to support this.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Allen? Councilmember Duncan?
I'm good.
Councilmember Bogue? All right, I have no comments on this. I'm glad we're moving forward. Besides that, other than that, entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a first and a second. If no further discussion, Jennifer, take roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Bogue?
Aye.
Councilmember Duncan?
Aye.
Councilmember Riddell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen?
Aye.
Mayor Avila?
Yes. All right, now we move on to item number 13, development agreement with the Yucaipa Valley Water District for tentative tract map 20130, and that would be with Fermin Preciado.
Yes, thank you. This is a development agreement with the Yucaipa Valley Water District for tentative tract map 20130. Over the years, council has heard many items related to the Wilson 3 Basin project, including the item that we just wrapped up. But this project is an important regional flood control project here in Yucaipa. On October 12th of this year, council approved a purchase and sale agreement with Woodside Homes for the purchase of the flood control surplus property that will not be required to build the Wilson 3 Basin project. Consistent with the memorandum of understanding between the city and flood control, which was approved in 2013, the proceeds from the sale of the surplus property would be flood control's contribution, a financial contribution for the construction of the basin project. And in order for the city to sell that surplus property to Woodside Homes, the city was to acquire it from the county first. Last week on October 21st, escrow closed for the property transfer, and the city is currently the owner of the property. The sale of the property to Woodside Homes is currently in escrow with a tentative closing date of October 28th, in a couple days. One of the conditions to close escrow that is identified in that purchase and sale agreement with Woodside Homes requires the city to enter into a development agreement with the Yucaipa Valley Water District for the tentative tract 20130, and that is the 144 lot residential subdivision that is planned to be developed on that surplus property, and it's located north of the basin on the screen. The development agreement was provided to City Council tonight under separate cover, and the development agreement before you tonight does specify the conditions for the water district to provide the water and also sewer service to the residential subdivision. The water district currently owns property within the basin footprint, and that area is on towards the middle, well, the water district owned property is in this area, right? The agreement also identifies that a portion of that property that's owned by the water district will be exchanged for a half-acre parcel of land that is located west of 2nd Street, and the agreement identifies that exchange will take place prior to construction beginning on the Phase 2 portion of the project, which is again on the downstream end. The specifics of the proposed land exchange are being determined, and staff will return to council at a later date with the recommendation. I would also like to clarify that the details for the transfer of the agreement and the conditions to Woodside Homes at the close of escrow are also being worked through with the Water District and Woodside Homes. That concludes my report, and staff's recommendation is that City Council approve and authorize the city manager to execute the development agreement with the Water District for the tentative tract map, authorize the city manager to work with the Water District to make minor adjustments to the development agreement, provided that if any significant changes are required, it will be brought back to City Council for further consideration, and also find that the development agreement is within the scope of the Oakland Creek Specific Plan environmental impact report that was completed and adopted by City Council several years ago. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Fermin. Are there any questions or comments of staff? Mr. Riddell?
No questions, no comments.
Ms. Allen?
Nope.
Mr. Duncan?
No.
Mr. Bogue? Nothing. Very good. Again, I'm glad we're moving this thing forward. Get it off our plate. So,
move.
have a motion to approve
I'll second.
and a second. Is there any further discussion on this item? Hearing none. Jennifer, take roll call vote, please. Oh, wait a minute. We need to, oh, no, that's right. Never mind. I'm on the wrong one. Go ahead, take the roll call vote.
Councilmember Bogue,
Aye.
Councilmember Duncan,
Aye.
Councilmember Riddell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen,
Aye.
Mayor Avila.
Yes. Okay, now we'll open up a public hearing for item number 14. And this is the Husband's Trust Conroy Development Case Number 20-049 GPA CUP, et cetera, et cetera. And that'll be with Ben Matlock.
All right, do you hear me? All right, thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. Before you is case number 20-049. It's comprised of a few different components. I'll read off kind of the different components, but the first part is a general plan amendment in ordinance number 396, which would change the land use designation of one particular parcel from the existing general commercial land use designation to the RM 72C designation, which is currently located directly north of the subject site. And then as part of the project within that proposed general plan amendment area is a conditional use permit and density bonus agreement to permit a 32-unit senior housing project in that. And then as part of the project approvals are also a few different variances that I'll discuss in the rest of the presentation. And this is an application from the Conroy Development Corporation, which is the property owner also for the Fifth Street Marketplace directly west of the subject site as well. Now, the property itself in question is a 1.8 acre parcel that is completely surrounded by either commercial uses to the west, south, and east, and then multifamily uses to the north, and is currently within the general commercial land use district. The site itself is vacant, but does feature some improvements from a prior commercial project where some utility work and essentially wet utilities were installed on site. And then there's also existing drive aisles and some parking spaces that connect the adjoining commercial uses. So the Stater Brothers facility, the Kutra's restaurant, and then the Fifth Street Marketplace as well. And then the project site itself is located behind Kutra, so there's no direct street frontage from Yucaipa Boulevard, but it is set back a little bit from that street. Now, the project itself, again, is a 32-unit senior housing project. With the density bonus agreement pursuant to the city's development code, it allows a 100% density bonus is allowed. And so the subject site does have 17.2 unit density or units per acre density as part of the project. The project itself does feature all one-bedroom units that have their own private yard spaces. There's also a clubhouse and variety of amenities to serve the residences, including some courtyard areas, a little tot lot or kind of putting green area, a pet place, and then some covered terraces with seating and stuff for the residents to use as well. As part of the project, it does provide parking as required under state law for a density bonus project with one bedroom or one space per bedroom. And then there's also the site, because it is in a kind of a commercial area and near the city's transit center, does have walking distance to the city's bus service routes as well. And then as part of the site design, it is kind of qualifies as a form of horizontal mixed use. And so those that live on site will have walking distance access to neighborhood serving retail uses, so including the restaurants, coffee shop, the Dairy Queen, the Stater Brothers, and then other establishments within those centers that residents would normally need to access, or senior citizens that would be as part of this project, we essentially be able to walk there without having to drive and get to those places. And then there's also an Uber pickup and drop off as part of the site design as well. And then the project itself is a gated project and does feature landscaping around the perimeter to help kind of soften the site in its commercial location, kind of make it a little bit more of a pleasant environment for those residents to live on site. Now, kind of the component I didn't mention, there's 3 variances proposed. A lot of this relates to one, the project being a type of horizontal mixed-use development occurring where our development code doesn't really have provisions for that type of use. And then also with the existing improvements of those drive aisles, it limits the building envelope available for the project. And so as part of the drive aisles along the eastern edge of the site and the northern edge means that the project has to shift down and then also move forward. The one variance is for the front yard setback. The project itself, as measured through the development code, front yard setback is the property line between the Kukas, but however, there's no street frontage, so the buffering kind of benefits of a front yard setback aren't necessarily applicable in this case. And then, as I mentioned, with the building envelope being modified with existing drive aisles and those easements, as well as a sewer easement. It pushes everything there, and then it goes a little bit closer to the adjoining commercial property that's also owned by the applicant. And then as kind of just more for background information, the lot coverage requirements, as well as the building setbacks, would be something that would be allowed in the commercial land use designation. But again, with this being kind of a more mixed-use development, it kind of breaks the mold a little bit in that regard, but they've designed the site to provide the greatest buffering capabilities and try to meet the open space intent of the development code and still provide those amenities for those residents on site. Now, the floor plan for all the units are exactly the same, so it's mirrored plans throughout the project with 919 square feet for each individual unit and 1-bedroom floor plans. Each unit also does feature their own private yard or balcony consistent with the development code requirements, and then amenities within each unit are also provided consistent with the city's development code for a multifamily project. As part of the project review, the applicants also included architecture review for the project. I do have a color materials board on the dais as well. Kind of the design, the Fifth Street Marketplace currently is going through a facade enhancement process. Kind of has a little bit more of a modern architectural style that's been implemented, and so this design carries through some of that kind of more contemporary design within it, but with some of the building massing and elevations and materials to complement more of a residential type project versus the commercial. If you guys are familiar with the area, a lot of the architecture in that area is kind of varying. The Stater Brothers Shopping Center, for example, has a very kind of dated aesthetic to it. And so with those kind of different styles, that the architecture team and the applicant wanted to try to do something that matches that particular building style that they want for this site. That's unique to that, but then also carry through some materials and design choices that also are compatible with the facade enhancements. They're currently under construction for the Fifth Street Marketplace. Some of those building wings, so the Hops and Spoats Brewery, that wing right there has been completed, and so that gives kind of the style that they wanted to build off, but then also tailor it specifically for the residential project. And then the next slide includes the conceptual landscaping. One thing I did want to note as part of an element for this project to tie in with the adjoining Fifth Street Marketplace is a decorative stairway that connects the project site to the Fifth Street Marketplace, so that gap between two of the buildings, they'll provide some enhancements for. There is a design proposed in the plans, however, as they work through some of the ADA requirements, it may be changing a little bit, but the goal is to have a very nice landscape transition to go from one project site that they have to this residential project, and then use that as a way for the residents on site to access those other, businesses such as the Queen Bean Restaurant and Dairy Queen and other shops within that center. And then I do have renderings provided that kind of show the design and the building mass and articulation for the particular project. And as part of a general plan amendment, the project was subject to environmental review pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act. A MND was prepared for the project and found that there were no significant impacts that would be associated with this type of project. The MND was routed to the State Clearinghouse for State Department review as well and posted in the News Mirror and online, and no comments were received on the project. Now, in terms of procedure, so the general plan amendment specifically does require city council approval, and so as part of the conditional use permit for the project, and all those together then are carried forward from that. The Plan Commission did review the project at their regular meeting of October 7th, 2020. I do apologize that the staff report did reference today's date for the Plan Commission, but it was October 7th, and they did vote unanimously in support of the project. Kind of the next steps with this particular project, assuming that it is approved, is when they're ready to build the individual units, a density bonus agreement would come back to City Council, which officially memorializes that they're receiving 100% density for senior housing, and then it would establish essentially the age restriction, the term for the age restriction, and then making sure that that is upheld through the project. And so City Council has previously approve what the development or the density bonus agreement looks like, and so they would just fill it out specifically for this. It would be executed and then memorialized as a covenant for this particular project. And then based on the expected timeline for construction, for the project. This would also contribute towards the upcoming regional housing needs allocation for the upcoming the sixth housing cycle. So this would essentially be one of those pipeline projects for the next 8 years for that planning cycle, and we would be able to receive credit for this type of product for that cycle. Some site photos as well is included in the agenda report, just showing the existing conditions and kind of the surrounding commercial environment and the residential uses behind the project site. And with that, the Plan Commission did recommend approval of the project. And so I'm happy to answer any questions, and then the applicant's representative is also here.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions of staff? Mr. Riddell?
I think it's a good project.
Mr. Duncan?
I think it's an outstanding project.
Mr. Bogue?
No question.
I have concerns. And I've talked to a couple people, staff, about my concerns. While the project itself looks good, I think it's not placed in the appropriate spot. We have to use a service entrance, the back of Rite Aid, to get to the property, or drive through parking lots to get to the entrance. And I don't think that's quite appropriate. The access between the Queen Bean side has a very narrow curb return to turn into that narrow street, which is also an access street between the two properties. I think that needs to be improved because, every vehicle has to, it's just too narrow through there. And I'm just not comfortable with it. But that's me. And it's based on some personal experience, how I've seen projects like this who are kind of not tucked out of the way, but off the beaten path of public safety, can turn sour. And I think we need to redo some things. I need to see a better picture, because right now I can't wrap my mind around this project as it sits. I'd like to see what the entrance is going to look like. I'd like to see our access. And I don't quite agree with the mitigations, the neg deck. That service entrance that's coming off of Yucaipa Boulevard that serves the back of the Rite Aid, that's where the Cisco truck parks whenever they're dropping off deliveries to the corner cafe. And then the Rite Aid vehicles that serve Rite Aid, they're also parking in that area, which can cause some traffic congestion, if not just blocking off the street altogether or the access altogether from the south side of Yucaipa Boulevard. It's just a feeling that I have. I'm glad everyone else thinks it's a good idea, but I'm just not comfortable with the way it's sitting right now. I need to have something a little bit more different. And for me to say this, I mean, I'm all for senior projects, believe me. But this one here just doesn't quite sit right with me, and I just don't feel comfortable with this. So, that's it.
Are we going to have the applicant come up?
Yeah, maybe applicant come up there, or both of them come up and change my mind.
We don't have anybody, no public comment on this, right?
We have no public comment.
I'm Ben Miller. I'm with DKC Architects. We're the architect for the project. And this is Josh Conroy.
Yeah, I'm Josh Conroy. I'm
Hi,
the
Josh.
owner-developer.
So if we understand your concerns correctly, it's the driveway off of Yucaipa Boulevard going north. You have Kuka's on one side, and you have the backside of Rite Aid on the other side. And is it I just want to make sure I understand it. It's because trucks and stuff will park back there in order to unload, offload, reload. I would say that there's multiple accesses to the site. As you know, you can come in from the north. You can also come in from the east, and that would be off that a parking lot next to that would be Stater Brothers. Or as you said, you can come from the south side, which is north of Kukas. As for the traffic, maybe you know more about this than I do, since this is your forte, but I believe that senior housing has less traffic impact than other projects that would be on that site. It's in the middle of a commercial zone right now, so if it remains commercial and a commercial development goes in there, the traffic studies would show that there'd be a higher degree of traffic going in and out, thus, more of an issue than what the concern you brought up. So I would argue that. Argue is the bad word. I'm not arguing.
No.
Oh, but I would
Appropriate term.
I would bring that point up, and I think also that the seniors have less of a there's less driving, especially when you're in the center of a complex like this. I know that in senior housing, it's always desirable to be in the center of things and not off the beaten path. So you want to, it's safer for access. You want to be near the restaurants. You want to be near the pharmacy. You want to be near the coffee shops where you're going to interact with people and just kind of live your life. And when you're, close in walking distance, in that respect, it's ideal. I understand the safety with trucks and loading, and I think having multiple access points, 2 additional ones, so 3 total, I think would help mitigate that if that ended up becoming a problem. Otherwise, it would be a logistical concern we would bring up with Rite Aid. Maybe they could pull somewhere else or have certain hours that traffic isn't an issue. So.
Yeah, I'd like to say something if I could.
Mr. Riddell?
Yeah. I don't think this project will generate as much traffic as if it was continued to be zoned commercial. And I think to have this type of project within walking distance of restaurants, grocery stores, drug stores, the shopping center on Fifth Street and Yucaipa Boulevard, as well as all the shopping within Stater Brothers, Rite Aid, and restaurants. To have this within walking distance of those, I think, is great for this type of project. And I don't think it's going to generate as much traffic as if it was continued to be zoned commercial. And so I approve of this project, and we could probably take a closer look at access and ingress in and out of it to make sure that it can be vacated in a hurry if it needs to be. But I think it's a great project, and I don't think it'll generate as much total traffic as if it was continued to be zoned commercial.
So I just want clarification of where we are on the public hearing, because it sounds as though we're moving to council discussion.
Well, yeah, you're right, and we should just go ahead and continue with Josh, if you have any words to say.
Ben touched on most of those things, and I think if you have a concern about the trucks and all that stuff, that road is an easement, and that's actually our property line for the shopping center. And we've had agreements with Rite Aid and with that, what's that cafe called? Abby's Cafe?
Alley's, yeah.
Yeah,
Abby's.
that they can absolutely use that if they want to for unloading, but I can come back to them and ask them to please relocate to a different loading area if that's going to kind of, lessen some of your concerns about
Where would
traffic congestion.
Yeah, there's no place else to put them that's going to be too far off site from
Correct.
their loading docks in both cases. Anyway, but I'm just one person, and Josh, guys, I'm always in favor of senior housing. We need to make sure our seniors have a quality housing, and this looks like a quality project. But for me, it's just not as clean as I would like it, just because of the access and driving through parking lots to get to get home is just not my idea. I'm just not comfortable with that.
David, can I
But-
say something? It's definitely a unique property, and I don't think there's, no matter what we do, we're going to have some
I
sort of issue.
think we're out of
Yeah,
order here.
So if,
What's that?
I think we need to close
yeah,
the
we need to
public
close the
hearing.
public hearing. Are there any other questions of staff or of the applicants, representatives?
I don't have any.
No.
Okay, thank you, guys. Thank you. And we'll go ahead and close the public hearing now, and we'll open it up for discussion. We had a little bit of input from Mr. Riddell, but I'd like to go ahead and hear from others.
Well, I'm not going to try to convince you. I just know
No,
that
no,
it's a unique piece of property, and you know, it's no matter what you put there, there's going to be some sort of issue. So I think a senior housing probably, considering that it is senior, most of the issues will be mitigated. It won't be perfect, but I think it's a good project.
Councilmember Allen?
Yeah, I agree, and I've watched what the Conroys have done with the Fifth Street Plaza project, and the transformation of that entire complex has been remarkable. The work that they are proceeding with and the buildings that are to the east is just, it's transformative. I really appreciate the quality and the attention to detail. I think that it's made a commercial area that wasn't as inviting, much more so, and I have confidence that this is going to follow suit in what they have done so far with the properties that they own and manage in our community, and that it's going to remain and move forward with the high quality that I think they have established for the projects that they have done. So I have utmost confidence, and if there's issues, I'm sure that they would be very willing to take those into consideration from our city engineer. If there is any issues, then they would be willing to make sure that they make the necessary modifications.
Mr. Duncan?
Like I said, I think it's a fantastic project. I make a motion that we approve it.
I'll second that.
Okay, Mr. Bogue, do you have any further comments?
No.
Okay, we have a first and a second.
And then before we go, I do have to read the ordinance as there. So it's ordinance number 396, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Yucaipa, California, amending ordinance number 343, amending the official land use plan and zoning ordinance of the City of Yucaipa.
Very good, thank you, sir. If there's no further discussion, we'll go ahead and call a roll call vote. Jennifer?
Councilmember Vogue,
Aye.
Councilmember Duncan,
Aye.
Councilmember Riddell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Allen,
Aye.
Mayor Avila.
With a reluctant yes, but it's cautionary. I don't want to have to say I told you so, but it passes. Thank you. Congratulations, gentlemen. All right, we'll move it on to announcements. Do we have any announcements other than to remind everybody of the El Dorado Fire Resource Fair that Scott brought up earlier?
I would just tell everybody to get out and vote
Get out and vote. Very good.
if you have not done so already.
Mr. Duncan?
How was Make a Difference Day? I had to work. I wasn't able to. Was somebody
I
going
was
to
going to
comment
make
about
that
that?
suggestion. Greg, I think you were there.
I did attend. It was a good turnout. We planted, I'm not sure how many trees. Was there 100 trees? Yeah. Good turnout. A lot of, it was a nice day out. We had a good time. I don't know what else. It was a good time.
Very good. Very good. Mr. Riddell, do you have any parting words?
No parting words.
All right, very good. We'll go on to closed session. Mr. Snow, do we have any closed session items for this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have two items. First is conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation. It's liability claim number 2020-13 by Kim Clark. We would expect reportable action on that item this evening. Second item is conference with real property negotiator regarding the portion of assessor's parcel number 0303-151-29. The city's negotiator is Mr. Casey. The negotiating parties, Marilyn Martin K. Under negotiation will be price and terms of payment, and we do not expect reportable actions on that item this evening.
Very well, very good. Are we going to meet here for closed session? Okay, so we'll go ahead and close the public session, and thank you very much, and we'll take a 5-minute break while we prepare for closed session. Yes, ma'am.